I guess it's time to talk about god rolls, so let's do it. Being able to identify which rolls is good is something that comes with experience. It's an acquired skill that you need to play this game enough to understand. However, with the right knowledge, you can greatly speed up this process. This video aims to give you a more foundational knowledge to build upon so that you may leave from here more equipped to judge your weapon rolls. Without further ado, let's get into it. A quick disclaimer, Destiny 2 is a game that constantly changes and evolves. This means that certain information may be rendered obsolete due to balance changes or gameplay updates. Therefore, I would expect this video to become less true the further in the future that you watch. However, if you're watching this after the final shape has released, I would recommend that you double check to make sure that the information that you learn is still accurate. First, I think it's good to establish a baseline of understanding of what's a god roll. For newer players, or even some returning players who did not engage much with the game, the concept of a god roll may be new to them. To put it simply, a god roll is the best combination of perks on a weapon. Each weapon will roll with a random set of predetermined perks from a perk pool. The god roll is the best combination of perks found in this pool. But how do we determine what is the best for this roll for PvE scenarios? Let's begin by talking about the various types of perks that weapons roll with. When you inspect a weapon by right-clicking it in-game, you will notice that the weapon will have 4 to 5 perk columns. Let's dissect these columns. The first 2 columns will normally be your barrel and magazine perks. These will typically offer buffs to stability, handling, range, reload speed, or magazine size. For swords, they will also be your blade and handle perks. They will offer the same thing, except they may offer block power as well. The third and fourth columns are where the weapon's main perks will be found. This is where you will find perks such as Reconstruction, Frenzy, Explosive Light, Bait and Switch, Demolitionist, Rewind Rounds, and so much more. The perks in these slots will be the most potent, and it should be the first thing that you look when it comes to judging a weapon's roll. The final column is what's called the origin trait. This is not a random perk and is decided by where the weapon originated from. For example, all the Vow of the Disciple weapons share the same Soul Drinker origin trait. Let's take our focus back to the third and fourth column perks. What do we want in these columns? Well, first, we need to identify what the perk pool for the weapon is. This can help inform us on the possible perks that the weapon can have, and thus we can make our judgment. For this, I would recommend 2 community resources. Light.gg or D2 Foundry are excellent resources for quickly checking on a weapon's perk pool. Clicking on a perk will display what the perks do. Then you want to ask yourself, what's the weapon's function? Will it be for DPSing bosses, add clear, killing majors? This will inform you on what perks to get. The first place to start checking on whether a roll is good or not is either through Light.gg or Destiny Item Manager, or DIM. Keep in mind, however, that this does not mean that the roll is good. It can give you an idea of what rolls people are keeping. DIM's role evaluation uses a wishlist system, which requires someone to constantly update the wishlist manually. This wishlist is also more geared for general play, so you need to double check again whether it's approving it because it's good for PvE or PvP. Light.gg relies on popularity. It checks the vault of all players that sign up with the service and use it to create a popularity list of perks based on what it finds in those player vaults. Therefore, these services can provide a baseline, but I would do a personal audit on top of that. Now that we have established the baseline, we can now use our own knowledge of perks to make a final call on what is good. On the screen, I have done the task of breaking up all the perks that are currently in the game into a couple of categories based on weapon type and the function that it's supposed to do. This is my personal opinion on what's really good for PvE in all content, up to even endgame content. The link to the tier list image will be provided in the description below. As a start, compare the rolls of your weapons with the chart to build up your knowledge on perks, and as you play more and judge more and more weapon rolls, you will be able to make these decisions more quickly. As for the first 2 columns, it does not really affect the weapon as much, so I would take a look at Light.gg for suggestions. However, in general, arrowhead break or fluted barrels are ideal for most guns in the first columns, with the second column being more gun specific. Let's end off by examining a weapon together and determining the god roll for the weapon. Let's take Apex Predator. By going to the D2 Foundry page, we can see its perk pool. Then let's think, what are we using this weapon for? It's a rocket launcher, so it's most likely going to be used for DPS. Alright, consulting Light.gg to get a baseline, we can see that the most popular role is Reconstruction plus Bait and Switch. But again, This is based off popularity and not whether it's actually good or not. Are there any other perks we can pick instead? By cross-referencing D2 Foundry's perk pool with my tier list, we can see that there may be other options. In the third column, Demolitionist is another good reload perk, so let's compare it with Reconstruction. Since Demolitionist requires a grenade to reload weapon and there really isn't a strong way to get grenades back in a DPS scenario, Reconstruction does seem to be a better option here, since we can use another weapon like Izanagi and Wilderflight to give Reconstruction enough time to reload a second rocket. So with the third column sorted, let's check out the fourth column. Our potential options seem to be Bait and Switch, Explosive Light, Surrounded, and Vorpal Weapon. These are all viable damage perks, so let's determine which one is the most ideal. Hovering over Surrounded in Light.gg shows that it's a 40% damage buff. Explosive Light is a 25% damage buff, Vorpal Weapon is a 10% damage buff, and Bait and Switch is a 35% damage buff. So this seems like a no-brainer, right? We should take Surrounded. However, if we read closer into Surrounded, we see that we need to be in 8 meters of 3 or more enemies. This is really risky when doing damage with rockets, as we have a chance to blow ourselves up if the enemies walk in front of us. Therefore, we would not like to have to rely on being near enemies to activate our damage perk. Therefore, Bait and Switch is the best option. Looking into Light.gg for the first 2 columns, we can see that Quick Launch and Impact Casing are by far and away the best options, so we will take those. Our final god roll will be Quick Launch, Impact Casing, Reconstruction, Bait and Switch, and Explosive Pact as our origin trait. This should be a great foundational start into learning weapon rolls. I will put the links to Light.gg, Dim, and D2 Foundry in the description. I will also link a guide made by the speedrunner Aegis that goes into way more depth on picking weapon rolls. Go watch his video once you are done with this if you want to learn more. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe and enable notifications to never miss an upload from me. Guides will be posted every Monday and Thursday. Thank you for watching and happy farming.